Hello, I'm Mickey Fulp, the Mercenary Geologist. Today I present a speech first given at the 124th Annual American Exploration and Mining Association meeting in Spokane, Washington on December 6, 2018. The trouble with geologists. We dumb field geologists, and I proudly count myself in that category, are a rather odd lot. We're not your regular 8 to 5 white collar types. We are way too educated to be real blue collar guys. Notice I say guys because we outnumber the fair sex in our business by about 9 to 1. We have a minimum of 4, often 5 years of college education. Most of us couldn't graduate in 4 years. Some of the less industrious we're on the 9-year plan. If you got a real BS and not some watered down BA degree, it was steeped in calculus and chemistry and physics and computer science for the first 2 years, and then included 35 to 40 hours of geology, taken mostly as an upperclassman. Sooner or later, most of us went to graduate school for a few more semesters, or years in my case. Took courses in the esoteric specialties of the science, and the ones who stuck it out wrote a book called a thesis or dissertation that now gathers dust in the university library stacks and has been read by a score, or at best a few hundred other geologists. During the summers, we loaded up an overstuffed duffel bag and a rucksack with our essentials, and we relocated for 3 months to an oil field in some redneck burg in Texas, an offshore drill rig in the Gulf of Mexico, a series of flea bag motels in bumfuck Nevada, a high altitude camp in the Rockies or the Andes, or a bug-infested bog in the boreal forest in northern Canada, where the sun never set and the workday never ended. We serviced oil field equipment or roughnecked on big oil rigs. Others set small drill rigs, collected in log core cuttings, and yelled at drillers when they repeatedly ignored our instructions. Sometimes we hiked around every day, broke rocks or dug dirt, put them in little bags, and carried them on our strong, broad backs to the truck, the helicopter, float plane, boat, mule, or wall tent. As we gained more experience, we got to carry around a masonite board fixed with a topo map covered by mylar, and we drew lines on it and filled in the spaces with pretty pastel colored pencils and called it a geology map. Every 3 or 4 weeks, we would all rendezvous and go to town, or maybe even the big city, or whatever spot of civilization might amount to, for a little R&R, which usually consisted of blowing lots of money on benders and bars and brief bouts of female companionship. At the end of the summer, we went back to college with just enough money to survive as poor students until the next seasonal job came along. That annual trek back to a meager student lifestyle after summers of high wages and expense accounts was enough to convince us that this schoolboy routine had to end sooner than later. The smart ones amongst us soon realized financial opportunities in mineral exploration business could lead to an adventurous and nomadic lifestyle for those so inclined, or a more comfortable upper middle class living for the more staid. Either way, an early semi-retirement was always in the cards, if we could just strike it rich with the right project, the right promoter, and the right company at the right time. Finally, at some point, they threw us out of the university, and we found good paying jobs in the real world of mineral exploration. Most of us, though well prepared in rock collecting, pulling IP cable, claim staking, sitting drill rigs, map making, and melding geological, geochemical, and geophysical data into drill targets, we're ill prepared for the corporate world. We have become book geologists in college and rock jocks in the field, but entered the real job market with few, if any, business or communication skills. These requisites had to be learned from experience on the job. For my generation, it's now 4 decades later. Though most of my peers and compatriots have years of field and office experience in both big and small companies, I find that many are still ill-equipped and ill-prepared to succeed in the real world of business. And that, folks, is the trouble with geologists. So why is that? I submit that geologists are caught in a netherworld, part blue-collar workers and part white-collar businessmen. We are outdoorsmen at heart. We like to drive around on bad roads in big trucks, fly around in small planes and helicopters, and hike up, down, and around huge mountains. We wander around in the deserts, woods, swamps, and jungles, live in camps with no electricity or running water, go days without bathing or shaving, and supplement daily rations with fish caught and game slayed. Some of us haggle over the price of gold nuggets with illegal miners, chase loose women, drink beers and shooters in the bar after work, and hang around with drillers, cat skinners, miners, and local laborers. Our language is true blue collar, interspersed with four-letter expletives when women aren't around, and sometimes even if they are. It's just about the best life there is for single guys of any age, though not always for married, i.e. soon-to-be divorced men. We go to work in the great outdoors almost every day. Much of what we do is manual labor, but we are not typical blue-collar guys. We tend to be lone wolves and are fiercely independent. Can you imagine a geologists union? That would be like trying to herd cats. Hell's bells, I've had mild disagreements over what kind of beer to drink, lead to vehement arguments, and degrade to highly personal insults. Once that confab is settled, with a fresh bud in a bottle versus a flat, smelly IPA on draft, we scribble away on bar napkins trying to show our equally inebriated geomates why the next drill hole is guaranteed to discover the mother lode of all gold deposits. Many geologists would prefer that their professional duties be restricted to these roles. But the junior exploration and mining business is entrepreneurial and driven by type A personalities. It runs on high-risk venture capital, and the best geologists are the ones that can span the bridge between a bush camp and the corporate boardroom. That said, many of my ilk are not as comfortable in a suit and tie 50 or 100 days a year as they are in hiking around in boots and rock hammer 150 days a year. But it takes both to be successful in this business. Whether they are prospectors, mappers, speculators, managers, or promoters, chief geos, VP, or CEOs, the geologists understand the field and the business become the successful men. These are the economic geologists, those that can turn rocks into money. The trouble with geologists is many have little knowledge of economics or business, and sadly, they do not care to learn. The problem begins with our college educations. We are trained as scientists in the University Geology Department and take math, science, computers, and geology, and not much else. If you choose the liberal arts route, You don't get enough science to be a good geologist. But with 2 degrees in geology, I never took a single course in communications, economics, English, or technical writing. Yet my profession is geologist, and I read, write, and speak on economics nearly every day. I learned these disciplines from personal motivation and experience. Lots of field geologists are only interested in pounding on rocks, that red and white outcrop plastered on the side of the mountain, what's on the back side of the hill, venturing into old decrepit mines, and moving the rig to the next location. They like to invent a new geological model after their last 3 ideas were tested by the drill and failed. They may never question if the project they're working on has a snowball's chance in hell of making a mine. I have found that the average exploration geologist lacks connection to the real world of economics, equities, marketing, finance, ore bodies, mines, IRR, and MPV. Many of my peers have never seriously considered what makes a good flagship property, let alone what constitutes an ore deposit. Folks, I submit that lithium brines in Nevada, graphite showings in Madagascar, metallic nickel plays in central BC, rare earth element bearing dikes in New Mexico, and narrow cobalt veins in Ontario are not mines in the making. They were not mines in the past. They are not mines now. They will not be mines in your lifetime or mine. They might be interesting research topics to your professor in the University Geology Department, but they don't make ore bodies. Yeah, these guys may be geologists, but they are not economic geologists. In resource exploration, we're always faced with very slim odds of success. And note I said that in an optimistic way. A pessimist might say overwhelming odds of failure. 1 out of every 10,000 prospects, 1 out of every 1,000 drill targets, 1 of every 100 resources, and 1 of every 5 deposits with a positive feasibility study will make a profitable mine. By a profitable mine, I mean the one that pays back capital in 5 years or less, returns dividends or earnings per share to its initial investors consistently from year to year, and is reclaimed at a fraction of the profits delivered during its productive mine life. Mines that go bankrupt or are acquired by other companies, have their capital costs written down, or end up with massive environmental liabilities borne by shareholders are not profitable mines in my book. 4 out of every 10 mines will fail. Another 4 out of 10 simply trade dollars, and 2 out of 10 will generate windfall profits. And don't forget this, for every failed mine, there was a positive feasibility study. That means that only 1 of 5 mines put in production is an ore body, i.e., it is mined at a profit. Exploration and mining is a capital-consuming business with much more money put into the ground than ever is taken out, let alone returned to the average shareholder. And these sobering statistics begin with the trouble with geologists. Because geologists are faced with such overwhelming odds, we often develop unrealistic optimism for a favorite prospect. With failure lurking at every turn of the drill to the right, our mindsets project a positive spin. The next big mine is sure to be found in this newly discovered outcrop. Those old prospects, or over that huge mountain and into the valley below. Bonanza will be struck in our next drill hole beneath the gravel cover, or with reinterpreted cross-sections and a new conceptual target, or our novel geological model developed from a similar deposit in another far-flung part of the world. And that, folks, is also the trouble with geologists. Most of us are legally blind, eternal optimists. Employing overly optimistic viewpoints, geologists can easily convince non-technical speculators, promoters, and the scam artists who finance startup investment vehicles to acquire parcels of ground and make them flagship properties for public companies. Marginal prospects are spun into elephantine opportunities. Commodities and deposits that have no future become a speculative bubble, and projects that are way too big or small for a junior company remain on the books after negative results. It's goddamn hard for a geologist to admit when his company should walk, if not run away. Many a junior fails because the merits of its flagship project is merely a figment of the top geos, often the CEO's, imagination. He may not understand what constitutes a good flagship project. He does not savvy when it's time to fish or cut bait, and/or he has a vested interest, i.e. skin in the game, both financially and intellectually. Simply put, the geologist is biased. In a typical scenario, the unholy trinity of an overzealous geologist, a slick promoter or conologist, and a sophisticated financier, ex-broker, or fund manager raise $1 million or $2 with a private placement for a new project. They are the 1 cent per share founders, and then they place all their friends and family in the cheap seed rounds. A few months later, the drill turns to the right, and a few selected gaudy drill intercepts generate a speculative market run. All the brokers jump in with their retail clients, and the retail investor, who has a penchant for gambling and greed and an even bigger fear of missing out on the next big thing, belatedly throws his money at the offer on the uptick. The wily insiders and their buddies take their profits, the bids dry up, trading volume drops, and the stock plummets when that next set of drill holes come in. Such is the state of affairs, and until more field geologists become real economic geologists, this flawed business model remains doomed to a wash, rinse, and repeat failure. With my writings, interviews, and presentations, I hope to change this paradigm. But it begins with you, the economic geologists in this audience. This is called the Mining and Finance Capital Session. You would not be here unless you were interested in the money end of this business. I hope and trust that you will take my rant to heart and perhaps give back and mentor some young geologists to become true economic geologists. Folks, this is a great and wonderful profession. You get to do a job you love, where you go to bed at night and you look at the clock and you think, how many hours do I have to sleep before I get up and go to work again? How can we be so lucky? Think about it. Who else do you know who gets to see the world at someone else's expense? Prospect and explore in the remote, far-flung ends of the earth. Develop and mine and create wealth. You know, I can only think of 4 or 5 professions that actually create wealth and don't just trade dollars. Loggers, farmers, fishermen, miners, that's about it. And we get to make Earth a better place to live for all concerned. I thank you for your time and your interest. Ciao for now.